There was a great piece in the New York Slimes, believe it or not. I don't know how it slipped in, by Michael Lynch. This is very important. He says, as WikiLeaks' trove of diplomatic dispatches continues to trickle out, one recent release has caused quite a stir. A cable from an American diplomat who said he was told by a Saudi oil executive that both official estimates of Saudi oil reserves and their ability to meet global demand in the long run have been vastly exaggerated. In turn, many proponents of peak oil theory, the idea that the global rate of oil production has entered a terminal decline, have insisted that the cable confirms their view on resource scarcity. Actually, it does nothing of the sort. The Saudi executive Sadat al-Husseini, a former head of exploration for the Saudi oil monopoly Aramco, has been making such claims for years. Finding them repeated in a confidential cable is news only to those unfamiliar with the field. His claims don't stand up to scrutiny. For one thing, according to the cable itself, Husseini said the estimates of Saudi reserves were exaggerated by some 300 billion barrels, but this is impossible. The Saudi government's estimate of proven reserves is 267 billion barrels. More likely, Husseini was referring to the claims by some Saudi oil execs that over the long term they expect to find 900 billion barrels in the ground. 51% of it will be recoverable. His point is this. Everybody keeps saying we're running out of oil. Now, one day we may, but that day is not today. That Saudi Arabia has much, much more in reserves than they're letting on. They're putting out a big lie. There was also an excellent story in CNS News that if we would actually allow offshore drilling in Alaska, Alaska would be equivalent to the 8th largest producer of oil in the world. Now, I want you to think about that. The 8th largest producer of oil in the world. That's just Alaska. We don't even have to count Texas or Louisiana and so forth. That's just Alaska. Massive reserves have been found in North Dakota. So why aren't we going and getting this oil? Why don't we go get our own oil? Because they won't let us. Who's they, Mark? You know who they are. The people who work in our government, representing us, working so hard now, protesting in the streets, demanding more pensions and health care, that we should continue to subsidize them. Them, those people, they won't allow us to drill. Oh, and the great president, him too, primarily him. But Mark, it's not intentional. Poor guy, he's just confused. He's not confused. The oil companies make requests to the federal government to explore for oil. They have to get approval from the Interior Department and often the EPA before they can drill, or if they want to expand drilling. And if they don't get permission, they can't do it. So if there's not drilling going on off of Alaska or California or Florida or in the Gulf of Mexico or anywhere else, it's because our government is saying no. And put aside the environmental bullcrap. Our EPA's rules don't extend to any other country on the face of the earth. So all these locations where all these foreign oil companies and foreign governments are involved at a breakneck speed to cut deals, to sign contracts, to drill, to provide a supply of relatively inexpensive fuel to its citizens, goes on no matter what the Environmental Protection Agency does. And whatever pollution exists in Saudi Arabia or Red China or Venezuela doesn't stay over those countries. It moves all over the world. So the idea that we should punish ourselves, that our government should impose these obstructions on us is outrageous. Absolutely outrageous. Now, yes, there will be accidents. You want to know why? Because man isn't perfect. Machinery isn't perfect. Just like bureaucrats aren't perfect. But as I've said many times, we don't stop flying planes when we have terrible accidents. We don't stop using trains when we have terrible accidents. 40,000 or so people killed a year in automobiles. We don't stop driving because of that. And yet, for some reason, we have a terrible oil gusher far off in the Gulf Coast, and we shut the whole damn thing down. Why? Because it's an agenda. That's why. Now, Mark, I don't understand. So if the price of electricity goes up because the EPA is shutting down coal mines and making it much more difficult to actually do what needs to be done to produce electricity, or if we are denying ourselves our own domestic sources of fuel, how does that help Obama? How does that help Obama? It's very simple. He gets to make decisions over your life. The EPA, the Interior Department, all the rest of it become more and more powerful. More and more powerful over how you can live, over your mobility, over what's acceptable to them. That's what non-capitalism, that's what non-constitutionalism is all about. Tyranny. Controlling the people. Coercing the people. Repressing the people. That's what it's all about. And that's what they're doing. Just imagine, he picks up the phone, he tells the Attorney General of the United States, you know what, let's not defend the Defense of Marriage Act anymore. Look at all that power. Picks up the phone, calls the EPA administrator. Picks up the phone and calls the Secretary of the Interior. He can't do that if we control our own futures. And he can't do that to the private sector per se. So more power is concentrated within the hands of his own cronies. He can do it. And you have to keep in mind, he's a global citizen. Remember all that crap? That's right, he's a global citizen. You see, statism doesn't stop at the border. No, it doesn't. And you have to also keep in mind, when Obama talks about fundamental transformation, as I've discussed so many times, including this week, that means he does not support or like or in any way embrace what exists. He wants to transform it. So he doesn't embrace capitalism, wants to transform it. He doesn't embrace the Constitution, wants to transform it. And that's what he's doing.